To be honest, the interest rates don't bother me at all. If I had to pick, I would rather your interest rates be high. The only reason a lower interest rate would benefit me personally is when I'm looking to buy my own home. Other than that, higher interest rates to me means more renters for my properties, and it means I get better deals because people understand that interest rates are higher, so prices have to be lower. And when people want to wait for the interest rates to come down to start investing, now to buy your own home, I completely get it. But to invest, I feel like when the interest rates come down, it's just going to adjust by the prices going up, and it's going to be one versus the other. And as my buddy Ryan Weimer always told me, another fellow guy lives in London, I should link you guys up, but he always told me, dude, you marry the property and you date the interest rate. And I feel like that's what people are getting wrong right now.
Nick, my brother, it's so good to see you. And I'm not even going to try to give you an introduction because you are the king of the intros. And I'll just fall short. But for people that don't know you, you and I have so many crossover interests. You know, we both love jiu-jitsu. We're both black belts. We've been training a long time. We're both in real estate, and we both have podcasts. And I feel like we're both on that journey of just endless curiosity and having great conversations. So great to have you back, brother.
Pleasure to be out, man. It's always great talking to you. Every time I talk to you, I remember how much I like talking to you.
Well, Nick, what's so funny is you and I do, I do real estate, but it tends to be in Chicago and Northwest Indiana, where I'm from. You do real estate and you travel all over the country. I do jiu-jitsu and it tends to be at my two gyms, Chicago and Indiana. I always see you traveling the world, training at 5 a.m. with all these famous people, just training with Mario Sperry in Florida. You're always in California. It's incredible for me looking on the outside, looking in. I always wonder how you have the energy to do what you do. But I think one day, when you're older, you're going to look back at the period you're living right now and you're going to say, man, what an incredible adventure. Because you really do. You live an amazing life. And it's just so cool to see from the outside. Like you make the time and the effort for all the connections and you make a business out of, I look at one market, you're looking at the whole of North America. So I think it's so amazing what you're doing.
Thanks, man. I think it's like anything else. You see people post that stuff on social media where they're like, 10 years from now, you're going to wish you had your energy, your waistline, your hairline, your this, your that, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, yeah, so, and during the pandemic where you start the podcast, you talk to people and you make these relationships and then you don't see them. And then you get the opportunity to travel again. And it's kind of like, all right, I give this guy a heads up, see if I can come out there, and jiu-jitsu has been really cool. Like if you were a basketball player, you couldn't just call up and be like, hey, LeBron, like I play basketball too. Can I come train with you for an hour? But like with jiu-jitsu, it's like I get a hold of Kenny Florian and he's like, come to my house and train with me in my basement for an hour. Like it's pretty amazing, man. So, but like, to kind of like what you're saying is, dude, every morning at, 5 a.m. when that alarm goes off and you want to go to jiu-jitsu, part of you is always like, I want to stay in bed. You know what I mean? It's what we all do. So it's never easy, but everybody's got the same 24 hours. So you find the time if something's important to you to make sure you get it done.
I'm so glad. What you just said is so true. In 10 years, we would kill to be ourselves today. So that's such a good reminder because when I wake up with a sore back, I always think about that. When I want to complain about where I'm at today, I always think, man, when I'm 75, what I would give to be 45 again. So I think it's just those little tricks about the way you see things. I really believe that's the difference between happiness and not being so happy going through life.
Yeah, I think as like a middle-aged guy, it's been really interesting too to watch our parents. It's my dad's been having health issues, and then we just signed him up for like this rock steady boxing thing where he's going to go there and he's going to start working out a little bit and using different muscles and working out his core and his balance and stuff. And shout out to my buddy Dave Patton, Sarah Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's helping him out, but he got all upset when he got there. And he's like, what's the matter? He's like, well, I got to basically train like it's day one again. Like everything hurts. I have no mobility. I can barely move. And he got all teary-eyed and he's like, I want to be working out like I used to work out. And I was like, dude, let me tell you the last time I remember him going for a 10-mile run, I gave him my Guns N' Roses cassette to go listen to on his run to make sure that it was appropriate for me. So it's like, yeah, you wish you were in the shape you were. And I understand you're upset you can't work out today. But what about the 30 years in between when you lost your health and you had the ability to do it? Like we squander it away. And it trying to remind me of like, dude, even with real estate, like it's the same thing where I talk to people and they have their houses and I'm like, hey, what's the condition? And they're like, oh, it's in great condition. And then you go there and it's like, you haven't done anything to the plumbing in 20 years. You haven't touched the roof in 30 years. Your kitchen is the same as you moved in. Like it looks good to you, but compared to everything, it's not. And I feel like it's the same thing with people's health is every day you make these little choices and then 10, 15, 20 years go by and you don't realize like how far you've come from there. And then one day you go to use your house, use your plumbing, use your body, and now it gave out on you because you didn't do the things you need to maintain it along the way. And those are those little things that I'm learning as like I'm at this stage in my life. Is younger, I was like, I got to go hard, I got to go every day, I got to roll until I can't fucking move. And now it's like, no, like, just a little more vegetables, a little less fast food, a little more movement. And like, that's going to pay off 5, 6 times a week over the course of 10 or 15 years, way more than the person who goes hard. And basically, I think Sahil Bloom was just saying it is like so many people want to live their life of being extraordinary for a very short amount of time. But if you can just be average all the time, it's going to get you so much more long-term better results.
Yeah, that saying, a healthy man wants 1,000 things and a sick man just one. It's so true. I think about that all the time. I always say, every day I try and tick a few boxes. I try and be productive at work. I try and have some family time. I try and get a workout in. I try and eat relatively well, whatever it is. But if everything goes to shit and the only thing I do is get a good workout in, I feel like it's not really a wasted day. But if I tick all the other boxes and I have a workout plan that I miss, I don't feel good about myself. And I always think that's the thing. The health is the most important thing. No one would trade fame and riches for somebody who's not healthy. So I'm so glad you said that. And it really is. It's so hard because if you miss a day of the gym and you eat badly or you get super hammered, the next day you wake up and you look the same. You don't see the effects. But it's the same on the positive side too. Like your dad, the first day, the first week, he's not really going to see the effects of it. But if he keeps it going in the long term, it's going to nothing will positively compound his life more than that habit. So I think I'm so glad to see more and more entrepreneurs talk about it. Like Gary Vee, who's always not very athletic. He didn't look very physical and he was so successful. And then it was only in his 40s where he started talking about like, hey, my new goal is to get a good chest and I want to get in shape and I want to be, because it took him 20 years to realize that. And I feel like you and I have realized that from a young age through martial arts, that the health and fitness is just something that I feel like that trumps all other things of importance.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I feel like it's like everything where the food chain and the levels are so different. Where I remember for a long time, like when I was training and I was actually competing a lot more, guys would come in and they'd be like, well, I'm in shape, but I'm not in fight shape. It's like, well, you look good on a beach. It's like, but there's a huge difference between in shape and fight shape. And I feel like when you look at how most people handle themselves and handle their health, and then they go to a gym and they can't do anything, like because you and I have trained at a higher level around people that are training on a higher level every day, our standard of what's an acceptable shape is something that we're constantly being reminded that the young guys come in and they're so, I feel like that was like a blessing and a curse of, like you said, is dude, like, I go run 3 miles, you ran 38, you know what I mean? Like you're such a higher level of that kind of stuff. But I feel like it was like one of those good things that you're constantly around people that are like in peak physical condition. And there's not many sports that peak physical condition is considered a higher level than somebody who's about to get a fist fight.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was talking to a buddy of mine from Jiu-Jitsu, 45-year-old black belt like me yesterday, and we were talking about how for us, because so many of our friends are through Jiu-Jitsu or through sports, we think it's normal to be in your mid-40s in shape, training 5, 6, 7 days a week, and it's not normal. It's the people that we're around, they're very. I think I saw something today. It was like something crazy, like one in. It was multiples of thousands of people have a six pack. It's so it's like in a city of 1 million people, it's this tiny fraction, it's just so few people are healthy and in shape. But you and I, being in the world we're in, we're always looking at people like, man, that guy's an animal, like I could never be as good as him. So it's humbling, but it's good as well to be around those kind of people.
So this is interesting though, because I love your take on this because you've been all over the world, you travel, you go different places. I feel like when I was younger and I went on spring break, like the girls were in insane shape. The guys were all jacked. It was all like that kind of like Jersey Shore meathead look. Like me and all my buddies, all like your goal was to be just like jacked and ripped and tan and everything. Like, which I know sounds stupid now, but my point is like when I travel around now, when I go all over the country, like I just came back from South Florida and nobody's in shape. And I'm like, it's spring break. Like, I feel like over the last 5 or 10 years, I've noticed that. I've been like, man, if only when I was like in college, I didn't have to get in shape to go on vacation. Like, I could walk around. But I feel like I see it less and less and less than I ever have. That even in just like regular social circles, people that are in like college that have normally been in like really good shape are still neglecting their health. And I don't know if that is because of the fact that they spend more time on their phone behind a computer than actually being physical, and they spend more time with fake social interactions than real social actions. But I feel like all of it is trickling down to less of a concern for mental, physical, and health and well-being than I've ever seen before in the past.
Well, I think it's something that I notice when I go home to Europe. I definitely notice when I'm in my hometown, which is a suburb of London, and I'm just, I'm outside and I'm seeing a bunch of people. The average is so much slimmer and healthier than the average in, say, Chicago, for instance. And then I was just in the Philippines with my wife for my father-in-law's funeral, and it was so we went there under such sad pretenses, but it ended up being, I mean, for me at least, it was it was such a wonderful experience because I got to meet a side of my wife's family that I'd never met before, and there was probably 75 relatives in this little tiny island in Philippines, and they were just so. I mean, they have a tough life, Nick. A lot of the kids don't have shoes. It's they don't have access to dental care. The older people like we do, but the kids look so just slim, vibrant, healthy, and just because they were outside the whole time. I mean, it's incredible the difference seeing the way they're growing up to where the sedentary American kids are growing up. And I think that's such a challenge that I'm finding with my son is he's 4 years old, and he already asked for daddy YouTube, like and we make sure to put so he can only see educational things on there, but the allure of screens is so strong. And when it's cold outside, I always try and get him outside, and he's a little trooper. He goes out there, but a lot of times it's cold, he doesn't really want to. It's a fight to get him out there, but I'm like, I've got to get him outside, I've got to get him moving. It's just that's definitely a struggle. And then for us, like you said, when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m., there's part of you that's like, oh, I wish I didn't have this. Got to go to jiu-jitsu now, but luckily you've made an appointment, so you got a stud black belt waiting for you, so it's not like you can get out of it. But I think it's the biggest misconception of people that aren't in shape is they look at disciplined people that are in shape and they think, oh, it's okay for them because it's easy for them. And I think the message is it's not easy for anybody, but nothing you're proud of in life comes from doing easy things. It's always from doing hard things, and nothing will give you more happiness than not feeling like getting some exercise and going and doing it anyway.
I do. I couldn't have said that better. I think that's an amazing takeaway. And, like you said, there's something to be said for checking the book. Like I've been hearing a lot of stuff back and forth about, like, I'll tell people like cold plunge and they'll be like, oh, well, there's no scientific this or that about it. Blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but the fact that I'm forcing myself every day to do something that every single part of me does not want to do, and that's how you start the day, is by forcing you to do stuff that sucks, I feel like is a muscle. That's all those muscles. Like, and that's kind of like what I was saying to my dad full circle was when he was like, well, because the first day we were going to bring him, he canceled. I was pissed, and he was like, yeah, well, I'm tired and I don't feel good. It's like, yeah, dude, like me too. Like, I don't only go work out when I feel like working out. I don't only go to jujitsu when I feel like rolling. The most of the time, I actually don't. I want to sit at home. I want to relax. I want to be warm. I want to watch Netflix. I want to eat shit. But you go anyway, and the more you go, you start to feel good when you move around and you do things. So I think, like you said, everybody has that. But the second you start giving in to that voice that takes the easy way out, I feel like you slowly start to make that the habit of who you are and what you do, and those decisions compound. And now like everything is a choice, and every choice you make is either the choice of where you want to be in 5 years, to the right or to the left. And like every decision to go the easy route is going to be something that's that much harder 5 years from now, And I think people don't realize that they choose what's comfortable now and assume that later on things are going to get easier, but you didn't do anything or train anything to put yourself in a better mental, physical, or financial spot.
That idea of things being easier in the future. I remember complaining to my dad a few years ago, and I said, because my dad's very, very healthy and fit and in shape, and he does crazy adventures. And I said, Dad, I've got this feeling like my legs just feel heavy, and I never had that before. Have you had that? And he said, son, it only gets worse. And I remember thinking, oh, great, By the way, Nate, a little aside on the cold plunge, because I absolutely love that. And I originally got it because I thought it was the anti-inflammatory properties. I thought it'd be healthy for my body. And I'm sure it is. And, it burns calories and all that stuff. But for me, what you said is so true. Doing something you don't want to do, I never want to get in it. But the other thing is, I think there is quite a lot of evidence coming out now about the happiness when you get out of the cold. And I 100%, I normally do it. I don't do it first thing in the morning, but I normally do it in the morning at some point, and it's relatively soon after that I head out to work normally if I'm going to the city. And on that drive, I am so much happier. I really am. I throw on one of your podcasts. I'm feeling good about life. It really does make a huge difference to my mental state too. So I think there's so many. You got the physical benefits, you got the mood benefits, you got the benefits of doing something you don't want to do, and that's just one example. And there's so many things like that where, man, it's a pain to get one, but when you have one, it's 2-3 minutes. It's nothing, but the payoff is so big.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. I love it.
Nick, I want to ask you, you put a post early on in the year about one of your real estate deals that went really well. And I guess before we even start talking about real estate, how's that? So we're recording this early February. You're 10% in the year already. How are you feeling about this year? Like, are you big on certain goals, or do you just take more, kind of take it as it goes? But like, where are you seeing like where you're at and what you're hoping to do in 2025?
I like where I'm at. I think I would like to always do better. I would like to get more consistency because I feel like I'm doing too many things. So I'd like to find a way to be more consistent with that. And, some of the things like the podcast and all these things I've hired out again. So I don't have as much of non-revenue generating activities. So I'm trying to really put more time into that. But I still feel real bullish on real estate. I'm very bullish on single family homes. My goal is to trump up my marketing, which I'm doing. I put a lot of money into marketing. And trying to get that part right because I switched marketing companies like for the third time now. And so there's a lot of money going out the window for that, but there's time and stuff. So some of the leads that came in that I thought were really going to do well at the end of December, early January didn't pan out as much, but we got a couple really good deals closed. We have a couple that are in play. We have one that's a real big pain in my butt that's been stressing me out a little bit. But, I think it's just kind of another year of not making the same mistakes. That's really what I'm looking for is there's always going to be new stuff that pops up in business when the world changes, when the market changes, especially when you're dealing with distressed sellers who are going through their own type of crazy in life or maybe are crazy. It's hard to really plan on that because when you talk to them, they either don't know or they're not honest about what's really going on. And then they don't tell you that they have a brother-in-law or a wife or whatever. So like that kind of stuff, I feel like I control what I can control, which is putting money into marketing and making sure I'm picking up the phone as soon as they call and making sure I'm giving offers to everybody. Because what I think has been one of my problems the last probably Q4 is a bunch of leads come in, you start talking to them, you forget who you talked to, you forgot this one was supposed to make an offer, go back to that one. So, just getting back on the phone, talking to people, making more offers more consistently, I think is going to be the key to me closing more deals. I feel like it's not rocket science. You know what I mean? I'm not, I think my buddy that crushed it. He's one of my mentors. He said he had like 67% of his CRM were like uncontacted. And the guy still does like 35 deals a month. So it was nice to know that it wasn't like a Nick problem. It's like a business owner problem. But yeah, that's something I definitely want to solve. That's my biggest thing this year. And single family flips, creative deals, and keeping good rentals. I have some good financing. I got a good construction crew. So I would like to get as many properties as I can outside of the city of Chicago in the next 12 months and flip a whole bunch and hold a whole bunch. And then, do a little bit more land this year too.
So one thing that I think is so interesting, I've been in real estate about 10 years full time. I was doing a bit before, but 10 years. And I would say the last 5 years, I guess, geez, COVID is already 5 years ago. As the first 5 years of that was almost the same market, minor shifts, but almost the same market for 5 years. And then the 5 years from COVID, we've seen so many different kind of submarkets. And it's been so interesting just as an outside observer. And then, of course, I have a lot of interest because it's my business. But I'm also very optimistic and bullish for 2025. But when I talk to people, it's hard because I'm selling a lot of buildings from developers. And so, of course, I always say I'm not a salesman because I'm honest. So I don't try and sell a crappy product or lie about, the environment. But I generally am very bullish, even though rates suck. And there is still, with the Trump tariffs, there's still, the election's over, which is good. There's less uncertainty, but there is still some uncertainty in the market. And most people thought interest rates would be lower now than, 12 months ago. They thought they would be much lower in 12 months than they are today. And some of the projections I'm seeing they're barely going down in 12 months, which I think is incorrect. But yeah, so I guess why are you bullish? Because I'm bullish because I think that the market has not, I think the market is pricing in not enough. The difference between where the mortgage rate is and where the 10-year bond is there's a stark difference. And the last two times that happened was 2000, 2008. And it took about a year and a half for them to come in line. And we're already 4 months from the first rate cut. So I think we're less than a year out from a dramatic lowering interest rates to get more in line with that kind of 10-year bond. So that's kind of why I'm bullish. But I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about like why you're bullish. And did you have periods the last few years where you're like, I just don't really want to be doing stuff right now because the market is too uncertain? Or do you think because I think regardless of the market, you can always make money, right? There's always opportunity out there.
Yeah, I have not had any, and I've eaten some lumps over the years on some deals, so I do have a certain level of caution when I'm doing stuff. And to be honest, I haven't felt that in a while. I felt really confident in pretty much any property that we move forward and close with, that I'm going to be able to rent it or sell it or refinance it and have no issues. And it's been real strong, man. Like if you can get something at a great price, or you can take over a sub two at a great rate, or you can get something that's going to be in a good area. As far as I've seen, especially like in the surrounding Chicago areas, like, and again, because people talk about the real estate market and they listen to CNN, the real estate market is so local. Like it really, there's 10,000 real estate markets in our country. You can't tell me that what they're saying on CNN in California is the same as what they're seeing in parts of Alabama or even Florida, dude. Like you look at like Jacksonville versus Miami versus Tampa versus West Palm versus Fort Lauderdale, like there's too much. So I feel like you have to know your market a little bit. And like you look at Florida, people are moving there and it's been this big boom. And then over the last quarter, you've seen like the biggest migration out of Florida. Now people are going back to Texas because Florida is like twice the price. And so there's things there that I think are interesting. But for us, I've looked at days on market is still very low. Rents are through the roof. Even when I was trying to buy my own house, there was virtually nothing I could buy that I was going to be able to then move out of in the next couple of years and keep as a rental, because everything's got HOAs and the HOAs are restricting everything. So I feel like having a good rental product is a minimum. The only thing that's getting built everywhere I look is multifamily, and they're building these huge freaking A-class subdivisions that are thousands and thousands of units, and they're charging $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for them, and people can't afford it. And I think affordable housing is something that if you can get something under 300 grand, you're going to have a ton of people that want to buy it, regardless of the interest rates. And if not, the fact that most people cannot buy something right now because interest rates are high, prices are through the roof, and wages have not kept up. The cost of living is higher for everything. They're forced to rent. And if you have a decent affordable rental on a single family home that somebody doesn't have to worry about if there is another catastrophe, they're not stuck in an apartment in a building. I think that there's a lot of good things about a detached single family home, or even like, a townhome type of thing where there's a few different units that I think are going to be very solid. I think a lot of the big hedge funds and the big players are going all in on buying single family homes. And all the big people that I talk to are saying like in the next 5 or 10 years, owning a full detached single family home is going to be like an amazing asset class to have that the average Joe and Jane really can't buy anymore. And so I think the more of those you can pick up now, even if you don't make a killing on it on the rent initially, the appreciation and the pay down you'll get over 5 or 10 years, I think long ball is going to be a no-brainer. That was like kind of when I first got into real estate, somebody was like, dude, get 5 properties. Let them just pay themselves off for 20 years. Even if they're $200,000, you turn around when they're paid off free and clear, no matter what happens in the market. If you sell or finance those to somebody on the same terms as a bank, let's call it 1% of the sale price, principal, interest, tax, and insurance, you charge them $2,000 a month for the next 20 years on 5 properties. You got $10,000 a month coming in. You're sitting on $200,000 of equity, so you're a paper millionaire. And then you can always take the deed back if they don't. And you can always charge a premium on that. Like there's always going to be a need for affordable housing. And the more you can jump on and get that now, I think it's great. And to be honest, the interest rates don't bother me at all. If I had to pick, I would rather your interest rates be high. The only reason a lower interest rate would benefit me personally is when I'm looking to buy my own home. Other than that, higher interest rates to me means more renters for my properties, and it means I get better deals because people understand that interest rates are higher, so prices have to be lower. And when people want to wait for the interest rates to come down to start investing, now to buy your own home, I completely get it, but to invest, I feel like when the interest rates come down, it's just going to adjust by the prices going up, and it's going to be one versus the other. And as my buddy Ryan Weimer always told me, another fellow guy lives in London, I should link you guys up, but he always told me, dude, you marry the property and you date the interest rate. And I feel like that's what people are getting wrong right now.
That's so true. You mentioned the long time horizon. I think that's the biggest problem, not just with investing, but with life in general, right? I always think whenever you come to a difficult conclusion, if you say, what would myself in 5 years want me to do here? The answer is so clear. I've always found that. So, yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And it's so true. Yeah. You have the building, you can always refinance it, but the key is, if it works today in this environment, it's only going to be better as an owner when rates come down. So yeah, you mentioned that you like the high rates because people can't afford to buy. They're stuck renting, which I really like. One thing I don't understand, Nick, I do a lot of stuff that's standard, standard loans. And with the seller financing, are you offering them? Well, I guess I don't really understand why a seller would want to do seller financing as opposed to just sell it in the open market. Are you giving them like a 20% down payment, or are they doing 100? Like someone that's doing 100% seller financing, I just don't understand what's in it for them.
So it really depends. Some people need different things. When people are motivated to get out of like some of them don't need the money. And to be honest, some of them don't want the money because when you do seller financing, and it's easier if you're dealing with somebody that's an investor, because if you get somebody that owns like an investment property and then you want to sell, I try and pitch it as like, look, you bought this because you wanted monthly passive income. You're tired of being a landlord, so you don't want the headache and the liability of the people in the property. You can have both. I will take over all the liability of the property, and I'll still make you payments with none of the headaches. And if I don't pay you, you can take the asset back. And if you sell it to me, you're going to get taxed on it as like a taxable event for all that cash. Versus if you leave it as cash flow, there's less of a tax implication for you. So you're actually putting more money in your pocket. And, sometimes they don't go for it. Like there's definitely people that are like, no, I just want to get rid of it. But if also, I try and do no interest, but if somebody's like, well, what's the interest? It's like, look, I can pay you X amount today, but if you let me finance this for you over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, instead of me paying you $200,000 cash, you're making $350,000 on it over time. And sometimes they'll put a balloon on there or not, but especially if it's something that is just something that they don't want anymore. If something that they don't need anymore, they don't need the money. They inherited it. Like it's people like that are like, this is a problem for me. Just take away the problem. And if I can wind up making money on it, great. Like that's awesome. That's just gravy. And it's kind of like, well, here's, because they're never usually happy about the initial price. If you're going to pay cash, it's like, yeah, I get the people that call me like, oh, you buy houses. It's like, yep. It's like, well, I was going to put it on the market for 450, but I'll sell it to you for 450 cash. It's like, well, you don't understand what I do. Like,
Yeah.
why would I pay you over market value? Like what you're paying for is quick, easy,
Yeah.
no headaches, no showings, no closing costs. So because of that, I'm taking more risk and I'm making it easier for you. So I need a discount. And then if they don't like the offer, they go, oh, that's too low. It's like, all right, well, what do you need the money for? And sometimes they're like, hey man, I need 30 grand to put down on a house. Okay, well, what if I give you the 30 grand and I find a way that instead of paying you 150, I pay you 220, but you let me make you payments instead of the bank. And here's what that looks like. And then conversations always come down to either down payment, interest, monthly payments, or timeline. So if it becomes they need X amount per month, it's like, all right, well, what if I just give you $2,000 a month and we don't talk about interest at all? It all goes towards principal and I put you on a 5 loan that I need to pay you out as a balloon. Like I can go to a bank in 5 or 10 years and I had all principal interest pay downs. And then in 10 years, they get a big fat payout, much more than they would today. And in that time, I've socked the money away because of cash flow. So it doesn't always work, but like you'd be surprised how many times people are like, you know what? Yeah, I'll just do that. Especially when you just take the time to explain it to them. I feel like if you open with it, it sounds like, well, why would I do that? And I'll tell you the other thing that people get wrong all the time when I talk to them is they go, okay, well, Lawrence, I'm going to sell this house on the market for $300,000. And they think that they're getting $300,000 cash when they sell the house. And I'm like, look, you owe 180. You have closing costs, you have commissions, you have taxes. Like what you're actually putting in your pocket is only going to be $42,000. What if I gave you $20,000 and over the next 5 or 10 years, I gave you another seven? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's where when you let them really see, but you talk to somebody sometimes that's like, look, I'm selling this house. I basically own it free and clear because I bought it cash. I need the cash back out because there's plenty of people that will.
That's such a good point. I never thought about just the idea of you saying you're going to remove all the headaches from managing it. So you're going to get income. It's going to be completely passive. Because one of the mistakes people make in real estate is people say, oh, it's a passive investment. It's like, well, it's not a full-time job, but it's definitely not passive. You're managing tenants, evictions, maintenance, problems, headaches. I mean, there's a lot you're managing. So yeah, just by what you said is so interesting. It's like, you're solving someone's problem. So if you have an older person who doesn't want to deal with anything anymore, but they want a steady amount of income every month just to live, then you are the perfect solution for them. So that's a really good point. With these deals, Nick, are you sometimes doing if you need to put down a certain amount of payment, or if you're buying cash, are you always using your money, or do you use partners, or how do you structure the financial aspect of it?
I generally do use partners, and we have a couple of different ways we do it. So, and this is kind of what I was going to lead into next is like people are so big on seller financing, and seller financing could be great. But like if you're looking to hold a property long term, sometimes the reason they're going to seller finance it to you is because it needs a lot of work and they don't have the money to fix it up. So if they're going to seller finance it to you and you have to put in 30, 40, 50 grand and you're not putting up your own money, or even if you are, that money is now tied up. How are you getting it back out? So you have to change your strategy where if that is like, there's a couple of sub two and seller financing deals that we did that we wanted to keep. And we wound up just selling it because it's like, well, I borrowed 60 grand to put in. I put 30 in to fix it after that. I got to get this 90 grand back out, and getting that off monthly cash flow is not going to happen for a very long time. So in that case, we throw it back on the market and sell it. Or you can find DSCR lenders that once you've owned it for 6 months, you can basically show a chain of title and do a refinance out. It's somewhere between, depending on the lender, 70, 75% of the total new loan to value, and maybe put like a very little bit of amount of money in out of pocket and then be able to cash them out. But you want to make sure that you know that before you get in. So if you go over that LTV and you can't refinance out, plus the rates are going to be higher, so it might affect the cash flow, then obviously you want to turn around and you want to sell it. Or something that I've been looking more into that I've tried it a few times, we haven't really had any go through yet, but my buddy Nick, you should have him on your podcast, dude. He's incredible. But he does a ton of raps, dude, and he's crushing it. He calls himself a lien lord, not a landlord. And he basically gets properties on seller financing. Let's say that somebody puts 30 grand down, or they want 30 grand down. He finds another buyer. He makes them put 50 grand down. They want to buy her for 200. He sells it to them for 250. They want 10 years. He gives the other person 7 years. And he basically makes money three ways on it and never has to put any money in or have any problems. It's pretty awesome.
But, man, yeah. When I started in real estate, because for years I never heard people talk about these creative solutions, and like that, what Nick's doing is a great example. Is like you just find people and you solve their problems, and you get paid as a broker to do that, but you do it in a very creative way. And it's just life in general. There was a lady, and I'm blanking on her name. She was on Andrew Huberman's podcast, I think a week ago, maybe. And I think it's one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to in terms of just thinking outside the box. And she said, when you're young, she was an old lady, and she was saying, when you're young, you're taught, 1 + 1 = 2. But she's like, does it? You have one pool of water, another pool of water, and you add a third pool, and now you just have one pool of water. Or you have, there's so many different ways where you can think it's not so simple as 1 + 1 = 2. That's the childhood. That's trying to simplify things for kids. And so she was giving all these different examples of when you go through life, you're taught to think a certain way because you're in the system. So because you're in a certain system, especially kids in school. And she said, one thing is something bad happens to you, and you say, well, people say, well, try to look for the silver lining in the cloud. You accept it's bad. She's like, but I wouldn't even accept it's bad. I would just look at it as this is what makes life interesting. And I've got a new I have to grow as a person to solve this new problem. So like, she just changed everything about the way you look at things. And I remember I listened to it twice, and I thought, this is so important for me, Nick, because I've got a 4-year-old that I'm trying to shape into a future champion. So I've got to think about all these things about how I'm going to, I've got a lot of influence over him now. What school is he going to go to? Like all these different things that are going to really affect the way he thinks when he's older. And he's just so malleable. And it's like, man, I love hearing stuff like that because I really do. I want to turn everything on its head. Like why, you know, if you look at the majority of society today, they're unhealthy and unhappy. So why would I do what society expects me to do when I raise a kid? It's like there's a lovely quote. So it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I think about that a lot right now. Like right now, the society is profoundly sick. So if you want to be healthy, you want to be almost outside society. You want to do everything backwards. You want to turn things on its head. You want to look at things in a different way. And I think that's just so cool. That was one example with your buddy Nick, is just, I would have never have thought about that. And I'm a real estate professional, and it's so interesting. Like that's, I think the beautiful thing about what we do is we have these conversations with people and it just gives you a completely different lens to see the world. And it just challenges all your own thinking and the way you see things.
Yeah, dude, it's wild out there. I had James Krause on again recently, and this whole thing he kept saying, he was like, the problem with real estate is there's so many ways to win. And it's like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's a good problem to have when people are like, I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? And I'm like, make money. Like, it's a good thing that there's all these ways out there to make money. As long as you buy it right, you run your numbers right, and you know your market, like, kind of what you're going into and what you're doing. And it's cool to have all these little tricks and tips. And it's always scary trying something new, and there's always learning lessons along the way. But it's kind of everything, man. You look at what your game was as a white belt. There's stuff you don't even do anymore, but you can always bring it back when like the game changes again. You know what I mean? I feel like real estate's the same way. There was all these things that I learned about when I first started that I never did. And then as the market changes, you're like, oh yeah, like there's all these different cool things that you can always pull back out when you get stuck with the deal. And if you have creative options, it gives you more safety to just bail yourself out or limit the losses if something does go wrong.
Yeah, so the jiu-jitsu analogy is great too. You and I are both black belts. We've been training 20 plus years. And you took me to Jason Rao's seminar. It was awesome. It was a no-gi seminar with leg locks. And then the next week, I went to my buddy's gym and he had Henry Akins doing gi jiu-jitsu, very simple, basic stuff, but just on a whole nother level, like invisible jiu-jitsu, pressure, these tiny little subtleties. And I remember after the following like day thinking, man, I've been almost my whole life, adult life, been training jiu-jitsu. And I've just done 2 seminars with people that just blew my mind in terms of just one has just taken the, leg locks has been such a big thing now with no-gi. And it's just, for you and I, the old school guys who came up, I don't think you did many leg locks coming up. I know I didn't do it under Carlson Gracie Sr. back in the day. It wasn't really a thing. And now it's just that whole scene has just exploded into almost its own art. And then you just have this, I think one of Hickson's first black belts doing the real basics at a just insanely high level. And it just made me appreciate, but I was both frustrated, but also incredibly inspired at the depth of jiu-jitsu. And I thought it's such a good analogy for life. Like I want to pick a few things where I try to develop some kind of mastery, and I'll never get there with jiu-jitsu. I'll never get there with real estate. Like I'll keep trying, but like real mastery is just so difficult. I feel like you need several lifetimes to focus on just one thing. And you and I have a lot of interest, so it's going to be hard to do, but just having that, I feel like having the understanding of the depth of mastery of one thing, it gives you more of an appreciation and nuance for the other things in your life. And just the idea that, you can do almost anything. You can't do everything, but if you want to do it and you put that 10,000 hour rule in, you can get really good at many things, but you can't do them all. So you have to decide like what's important to you. And that's something that for the longest time, I never really appreciated. And now, because time is so scarce for me and I'm trying to juggle life and parenting and being present with my son, you get a new appreciation for just the trade-offs in life.
I think it's also an interesting concept to think about what mastery actually is, because like true mastery, how do you ever really achieve it? Like unless you focus on one thing your whole life, but then the person you learn that from, you're always going to feel like you don't have it compared to them. And I think with social media today, everybody compares each other to what somebody else is saying, which most of the time isn't even true. But it's kind of like, am I a master of jujitsu? Maybe compared to some of the blue belts that come in and they're like, man, Nick's so good. And I'm like, yeah, but then watch me, like, I'll roll with Lawrence or with Jason Rao or Kenny Florian, and I don't know anything. Or I even go to like a new gym and the white belts are all doing their basic pass that they learned from their instructor that I've never
Yeah.
seen before. And they're like, well, you're a black belt. I'm like, but I've never seen that. You're better at that than I am. And it's the same thing with real estate. Like, I feel like when you surround yourself with people, there's always somebody better. So, like, I feel like the only thing you should strive for is not necessarily mastery, but like you're only really competing with yourself. Like I'll never be as good as Jason Rao, but how do I do things better and more efficiently than I was doing last week for me? You know what I mean? Like how do I grow? How do I get better? How do I have those aha moments? How do I keep challenging myself to learn new things and then try them instead of being comfortable with, I like my lockdown, I like my guillotines, but like I'm going to go for some new things and risk getting my guard pass and risk getting a purple belt, catching me in something, but it's all part of like the growing process. So I can expand and I can keep that going. But, I think I've kind of let go of the idea of like ever being a master because every room I walk into, there's people that every day, no matter how much I know, make me feel like I know nothing.
But I think that's the steps to mastery is by being around the absolute best. Like well, like you said, if we were in a different sport, we wouldn't even have access to the absolute elite. But you and I do, and it's just it really is such an honor. Listen, last thing, brother. I know you've only got a few minutes, but you wrote something recently. I saw you writing about how you want to be more appreciative. Like, so many times, especially when you're younger, you're always looking forward. What's next? You have a great achievement. You're happy for a few hours. And then like, how can I build on it? And you said you really want to take a bit more time and kind of appreciate the journey more. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what we started with talking about how in 10 years, the face and the hairline and the waistline and the financial situation, the problems you have, you're going to be jealous. You're going to wish you had those problems. You're going to wish you had that. And so more and more people that I talk to that are successful, people keep thinking they'll be happy when they get this, or they'll take care of their health when they get that. And, I read a book by a guy named Sahil Bloom, it was one of the best books I've read. I think I sent you a copy. I don't know if you got it yet. I
Oh,
did send you a copy. I don't know if it came
brother,
yet, but
thank you.
yeah, I sent you a copy. It's called The Five Types of Wealth. And it was just all about these different things of like, you have to have this balance of like mental wealth, social wealth, physical wealth, and time wealth was a big thing. And like the last part of that was financial wealth. And it was like the shortest chapter in the book. And it made you realize all the things where people chase these goals and they chase this one thing that they want. And then when you get it, you realize you sacrificed all the things that were really important to get that one thing. And then when you got it, it really wasn't what you wanted anyway. And so it's an interesting thing. Like I feel like we all know that time is limited. We all know that life is peaks and valleys. We all know that like our family members are going to get old and our kids are going to move out and all these types of things. And we all understand that time is our most precious and experiences are really what shape your life. And then knowing that, we all discount it. We all think we have more of it. And then we do have abundance of these other things. You have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in your bank account. You own properties. You do all these things. You're in great health. You run 38 miles. And we don't appreciate that. It's like, oh my goodness, if I don't go work out today, my whole day is a failure. And then you realize, yeah, but I didn't work out today, but I took my kid to the movies. I was there to be with my wife. Like I called my best friend, Sean. I got on a podcast with Boss and with Lawrence. And it's these things where you go, well, I didn't accomplish this thing. It's like, yeah, but like, look at all these other things that you did. And like that made a big deal for everybody else. And, those relationships and those experiences and the time that you put in to make for other people today are going to be the people that appreciate you in 5 or 10 years. And the stuff that you think are important, you're going to look back and realize that they really weren't, and it's not always easy because, especially coming from somebody that grew up with nothing, you always remember what that feels like. And I feel like that's a driver, which I'm happy I have because it pushes my, it's my drive. It keeps me going and it keeps me from always having to feel like somebody's chasing me. I always got to be fighting to survive. But at some point you want to have a little bit of the other side too, to be like I did get a black belt and that was cool. Like I'm not worried about the next stripe. I'm worried about like, yeah, I worked hard for that and I'm going to take a minute and appreciate that. And, you know, I like, yeah, you do all these podcast episodes, but to me, I don't look at the number. It's like every hour I get to spend talking with somebody like you without interruption is important for me. And like every time I book a podcast, it's like, oh, like, you know, we rescheduled this like 3 times, you know, it's like, I'm busy. This happened, that happened, this happened, but you make the time for it. And you realize like, wasn't as important as spending some time with you.
Nick, that was so beautiful. We really do. We have a choice every day on how we see the world, and we can even either be thankful for what we have, or we can be miserable because we don't have something we probably don't even need. So, absolutely love that, brother. It's really beautiful. I love you, man. You're such an inspiration. I'm so glad we met. It's so cool, like you and I seeing, you know, I get to watch your journey and see you do all these cool things. And every now and again, we get to meet somewhere at a cool seminar and hang out. And I just really appreciate you, brother. I really, the last few minutes of what you just said is I'm going to really take it to heart and just be appreciative of what I have. So thank you so much, Nick.
Well, likewise, sir, you inspire me. I tell everybody, I'm always like, you got to meet my guy, Lawrence. Everything I do, he does better and he looks better doing it. So
Not sure at all, but I love you, Nick.